The Alpha King had everything a ruler could want, except the one person who once believed he would protect her. The grand gates of Blackwood Palace stood silent beneath the morning sky as Emma Carter walked through them for the final time. She carried no anger in her heart, no desire for revenge, and no wish to make anyone regret what they had done. She simply carried the quiet sadness of someone who had waited too long to be seen. For months, Emma had lived among the powerful werewolf pack of the kingdom, believing she had finally found a place where she belonged. As an Omega, she knew acceptance was not always easy to earn. She knew many people judged her before they ever learned her story. But she believed one person would always stand beside her. Alpha King Adrian Blackwood, the man whose presence commanded respect throughout the kingdom. The man whose words could change the future of an entire pack. The man she trusted more than anyone. Emma remembered the first time she entered the palace. She remembered seeing Adrian not as a powerful ruler, but as someone who carried the weight of countless responsibilities. She saw the kindness hidden behind his serious expression. She believed that beneath the title of Alpha King was a person who understood what it meant to protect those who needed him. That belief was the reason she stayed when others questioned why an Omega like her belonged in the palace. It was the reason she remained patient when members of the pack treated her like an outsider. They never openly welcomed her. They never truly accepted her. Their words carried doubt, and their actions made her feel like she was always trying to prove she deserved to exist in their world. But Emma continued showing kindness. She helped the palace healers. She cared for the younger members of the pack. She supported the people around her without expecting anything in return. She believed that eventually, kindness would be enough to show them who she really was. But the hardest part was not the judgment from the pack. The hardest part was looking toward Adrian and realizing he saw everything. He noticed the distance between Emma and the others. He heard the whispers. He understood the tension. Yet every time she hoped he would speak, every time she waited for him to defend her, he remained silent. Adrian told himself he was protecting the peace of the kingdom. He believed avoiding conflict among the pack was the responsibility of a good alpha, but he did not understand that his silence was becoming the deepest wound of all. Emma never wanted power. She never wanted special treatment. She only wanted to know that the person she trusted would choose her when it mattered. And now, standing outside the palace gates, she finally understood something she had been afraid to admit. A place could look like home and still make someone feel alone. The wind moved gently through the trees as Emma took one last look at the palace towers. Somewhere inside those walls was the Alpha King who would one day realize what he had lost. But by then, Emma would no longer be the woman waiting for him to notice her. The palace had always been filled with voices, but Emma Carter had learned that silence could sometimes hurt the most. Before she ever reached the gates she would one day leave behind, there had been months of quiet disappointment hidden beneath her gentle smile. She remembered the early days when she first arrived in the kingdom of Blackwood. She was only an Omega entering a world where status and power seemed to define a person's worth. Many members of the werewolf pack believed an Omega should remain unnoticed, standing far away from important decisions and powerful figures. Emma understood those expectations, but she never allowed them to decide who she was. She believed kindness could build bridges where judgment created walls. Every morning, she walked through the palace halls with patience and grace. She helped the healers organize supplies, offered comfort to younger pack members, and treated every person with the same respect she hoped to receive. She never asked anyone to admire her. She only hoped they would see her as someone who belonged. At first, Emma believed Adrian Blackwood understood her. The Alpha King had shown her moments of warmth that made her believe there was more beneath his powerful image. He listened when she spoke. He noticed details others ignored. For a short time, Emma believed she had found someone who truly saw her. But as the months passed, the distance between them grew. The members of the pack became more comfortable expressing their doubts about her place in the palace. They questioned why an Omega should stand near the Alpha King. They wondered what someone like Emma could offer to a kingdom built around strength and tradition. Emma heard every word, but she continued moving forward with quiet dignity. What hurt the most was not the opinions of others. It was that Adrian heard those opinions too. He saw the way Emma became quieter. He saw the moments when she stood alone during gatherings. He saw the kindness she continued offering even when she received little in return. Yet he convinced himself that staying neutral was the right choice. As Alpha King, Adrian believed he had to maintain balance among his people. He thought stepping forward for Emma would create greater conflict. He did not realize that by refusing to choose, he was already making a choice. Emma never wanted Adrian to fight against his own people for her. She never wanted him to abandon his responsibilities. She only wanted him to acknowledge that she deserved the same respect as anyone else. One evening, while standing near the palace garden, Emma watched the lights of the kingdom glowing in the distance. She wondered how a place filled with thousands of people could still feel so lonely. She thought about all the moments when she had waited for Adrian to say something. A simple sentence, a small sign that she mattered. But the longer she waited, the more she understood that love could not survive on hope alone. Somewhere inside the palace, Adrian continued believing everything could remain the same. He did not know that Emma had already begun changing. He did not know that the woman who once waited for his protection was slowly learning how to stand on her own. The days passed quietly inside Blackwood Palace, but beneath the calm surface, Emma Carter felt herself slowly disappearing from the world she once hoped to call home. She continued performing her duties with the same kindness she had always shown, yet something inside her had changed. She no longer expected the pack to understand her. She no longer waited for every cold expression to become a warm one. She had spent too much time trying to prove that she deserved a place among them. Now she began asking herself a different question. Did she truly belong somewhere that required her to constantly prove her worth? The answer frightened her because deep down, she already knew it. Emma remembered the small moments that had built her disappointment over time. The conversations that stopped when she entered the room. The invitations she never received. The quiet judgment hidden behind polite smiles. None of those moments alone were enough to break her heart. But together, they created a feeling she could no longer ignore. She felt like a guest in a place where she had hoped to find family. Adrian Blackwood noticed the change, even if he refused to admit it. The Alpha King saw that Emma spoke less during royal gatherings. He noticed that the light in her eyes seemed different. The woman who once brought warmth into every room had become more careful with her emotions. Yet Adrian continued telling himself that time would solve everything. He believed the tension would fade naturally. He believed the pack would eventually accept Emma, without him needing to interfere. But Emma understood something Adrian did not. Silence did not always keep peace. Sometimes silence allowed people to believe their actions had no consequences. One afternoon, Emma visited the palace archives to organize old records. There, surrounded by stories of past generations, she found herself thinking about the future. She wondered what kind of life she wanted. She wondered if she wanted to spend years hoping someone would finally choose her. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine leaving. The thought brought sadness, but it also brought a strange sense of relief. Meanwhile, Adrian attended another meeting with the pack leaders. The discussion focused on tradition, responsibility, and the future of the kingdom. Several members expressed concerns about changing the old ways. Adrian listened carefully, but his thoughts kept returning to Emma. He remembered how she had always treated others with patience, even when they did not offer the same in return. He remembered how she never used her pain as a reason to hurt others. A quiet realization began forming in his mind. The person everyone underestimated was often the one showing the most strength. But realizing something and acting on it were two different things. Adrian still hesitated, trapped between his role as Alpha King and his feelings as a person. He did not know that Emma had already reached the point where waiting was no longer possible. That night, as the palace became quiet, Emma stood near her window and looked beyond the kingdom walls. She felt the weight of everything she had carried for so long. She had given her loyalty. She had given her kindness. She had given her trust. Now, she wondered if it was time to give herself a chance at a different life. The decision Emma Carter had been afraid to make slowly became the only decision that brought her peace. For months, she had believed patience would be enough. She believed that if she continued showing kindness, the people around her would eventually see her heart. She believed that if she waited long enough, Adrian Blackwood would finally understand what she needed. But as the days passed, Emma realized that waiting for someone else to recognize her value was causing her to forget her own. The palace that once felt full of possibility now felt like a place where every hallway carried memories of disappointment. She walked through those familiar halls one final time. noticing the small details she had once loved. The quiet library where she spent peaceful mornings. The gardens where she found moments of comfort. The rooms where she had dreamed of building a future. Every corner held a memory, but not every memory was a happy one. Emma was not leaving because she hated the kingdom. She was leaving because she needed to protect the part of herself that still believed she deserved happiness. Before making her choice, Emma visited the palace healer, someone who had always treated her with genuine kindness. The older healer noticed the change in her expression and gently asked if she was certain about leaving. Emma smiled softly and admitted that she was afraid, but staying somewhere she felt invisible was becoming harder than starting over. She did not want a life built on waiting for acceptance. She wanted a life where she could breathe freely and know she was valued. Meanwhile, Adrian continued his duties as Alpha King, unaware that the person who had quietly supported him was preparing to disappear from his world. He attended meetings, reviewed reports, and handled the endless responsibilities of leadership. To everyone else, he appeared unchanged. But inside, something felt different. He found himself searching for Emma during gatherings. He noticed when her voice was missing from conversations. He began realizing how many small things she had done that he once considered ordinary. The warmth she brought to the palace had become something he expected without understanding its importance. That evening, Adrian finally decided to speak with her. He walked toward the garden where Emma often spent quiet moments, hoping to tell her that he had noticed her pain. But when he arrived, the garden was empty. The peaceful place that once carried her presence felt strangely silent. Adrian did not know that Emma had already made her choice. She had left a simple letter behind, not filled with anger or accusations, but with honesty. She thanked him for the moments when he made her feel seen. She thanked him for the kindness he had shown before everything changed. But she also admitted that she could no longer remain somewhere she felt forgotten. When Adrian read those words, he felt something he had avoided for months. Regret, not because Emma had left, but because he finally understood that she should never have needed to leave to be valued. Beyond the kingdom walls, Emma began a new journey with a quiet hope in her heart. She did not know what waited ahead. She only knew that for the first time in a long while, she was choosing herself. The morning after Emma Carter left Blackwood Kingdom felt different to everyone, but no one felt the emptiness more than Alpha King Adrian Blackwood. The palace remained exactly the same on the outside. The halls were still filled with servants, the royal meetings continued, and the kingdom still looked strong from a distance. Yet something important was missing. The quiet presence that had once brought warmth into the palace was gone. Adrian walked through the familiar corridors and noticed the absence of small things he had never appreciated before. The gentle greetings from Emma, the thoughtful gestures she offered without being asked, the way she always found time to help others even when nobody noticed her efforts. For the first time, Adrian began to understand that Emma had never been simply another person living in his palace. She had been the heart of many moments he had taken for granted. Meanwhile, far away from the kingdom, Emma began building a new life. She settled in a peaceful village near the edge of the werewolf territory, a place where nobody knew her past or judged her by her Omega status. The villagers did not see her as someone who needed to prove herself. They saw her as Emma, a kind woman who arrived with hope and a desire to help. She spent her days assisting local healers and supporting families who needed guidance. Slowly, she discovered something she had forgotten during her time at the palace. She was valuable even when no powerful person recognized it. She did not need a royal title to make a difference. She did not need the approval of a pack to know her own worth. Weeks passed, and Emma found peace in her new surroundings. But there was one secret she carried with her, one that changed everything about the future. She had discovered that she was carrying the heir of the Alpha King. The news had filled her with many emotions. Happiness, uncertainty, and fear all existed together in her heart. She never wanted to use the child as a reason to return to the palace. She never wanted Adrian to come searching because of responsibility alone. She wanted the child to grow up surrounded by love, not surrounded by the same doubts and judgments she had endured. Back in Blackwood Kingdom, Adrian slowly uncovered the truth about how much Emma had done for everyone around her. He spoke with the palace, workers, and the healers. He listened to stories about her kindness, her patience, and the way she always helped others without expecting recognition. Each story revealed another piece of what he had failed to see. Adrian had spent months believing he was protecting his kingdom by staying neutral. Now he realized that a true alpha could not ignore the pain of someone under his protection. Leadership was not only about making decisions for many people. It was also about seeing the one person standing quietly in front of him. As the days continued, Adrian became determined to find Emma. But he knew something important. He could not search for her simply because he missed her. He had to search because he finally understood her value. Somewhere beyond the kingdom walls, Emma was creating a life built on respect and peace. And somewhere inside the palace, the Alpha King was beginning the journey of becoming the man she had always hoped he could be. The journey to find Emma Carter became the first decision Alpha King Adrian Blackwood made without thinking about his title before his heart. For years, Adrian had carried the responsibility of leading the Werewolf Kingdom, believing that every choice had to protect the greater good. But now, standing in the quiet halls of his palace, he understood that leadership without compassion could leave behind the very people who needed him most. He began asking questions he should have asked months earlier. He spoke with the healers who had worked beside Emma. He listened to the servants who remembered her kindness. He learned about the small moments he had overlooked, the moments when Emma helped others while receiving nothing in return. Every story revealed the same truth. Emma had never been the weakness some members of the pack believed her to be. She had been one of the strongest people in the kingdom. Meanwhile, Emma continued creating a peaceful life away from Blackwood Palace. The small village where she stayed welcomed her with warmth and acceptance. For the first time in months, she woke up without wondering if she belonged. She spent her mornings helping the village healers and her afternoons teaching younger villagers the skills she had learned over the years. Her life was simple, but it was filled with something she had been missing for a long time: peace. Yet even in that peaceful place, Emma knew her secret could not remain hidden forever. The child she carried was not just the heir of the Alpha King. The child represented a connection to a world she had left behind. She often wondered what Adrian would think if he discovered the truth. Would he come because he truly cared? Or would he come because duty demanded it? That question was the reason she remained silent. She wanted to be chosen, not claimed. She wanted to be valued, not needed because of a responsibility. Back in the kingdom, Adrian prepared to leave the palace in search of Emma. Some members of the council questioned his decision. They believed the Alpha King should focus on the kingdom rather than one person who had chosen to leave. But Adrian finally understood what they did not. A kingdom was not protected only by walls and traditions. It was protected by the trust between its people and its leader. He could not ask others to believe in him while ignoring the person who had believed in him first. Before leaving, Adrian stood in the empty garden where Emma used to spend her mornings. He remembered how often she sat there quietly, watching the flowers and finding beauty in simple things. He remembered how she smiled even when others did not understand her. For the first time, he allowed himself to admit the truth. He had not lost Emma because she was unwilling to stay. He lost her because he gave her too many reasons to leave. Far from the palace, Emma looked toward the distant mountains and wondered if the past would ever truly remain behind her. She did not know Adrian was coming. She did not know he was finally ready to face the mistakes he had made. But one thing had already changed. The Omega woman who once waited for someone to protect her had found her own strength. And the Alpha King who once believed power was enough was about to learn that trust was something far more precious. The road beyond Blackwood Kingdom was unfamiliar to Alpha King Adrian Blackwood, but for the first time in many years, he welcomed the uncertainty. He had spent his entire life knowing exactly where he stood. He was the ruler of the Werewolf Kingdom, the one everyone looked to for decisions, protection, and guidance. But now he traveled without the certainty of his title. He traveled as a man searching for someone he had failed to understand. During the journey, Adrian found himself remembering the moments he had ignored. He remembered Emma Carter standing quietly during pack gatherings, offering kindness even when others questioned her place. He remembered how she never responded to judgment with anger. Instead, she continued helping people who had not taken the time to know her. Those memories became harder to ignore with every mile he traveled. Adrian finally understood that Emma had never asked him to choose between her and his kingdom. She had only wanted him to recognize that she was part of that kingdom too. Meanwhile, in the peaceful village beyond the forest, Emma continued living a life she never thought she would have. She had built a small routine surrounded by people who valued her presence. The villagers trusted her advice, appreciated her kindness, and welcomed her without asking what she could offer in return. For Emma, this simple acceptance felt like a treasure she had forgotten existed. Yet every night, when the village became quiet, she thought about the future. She thought about the child she would soon welcome into the world and the choices she needed to make. She wanted her child to grow up knowing love, respect, and security. She did not want the next generation to inherit the same fears and judgments that had caused her so much pain. When Adrian finally reached the village, he did not arrive with guards or royal announcements. He arrived quietly because he knew this moment was not about power. It was about trust. He saw Emma from a distance, helping a group of villagers organize supplies. For a moment, he simply watched. The woman he once thought needed his protection was standing confidently on her own. She looked peaceful. She looked happy. And that realization touched him more deeply than he expected. When Emma noticed him, the moment between them was filled with emotions neither of them could easily express. She saw the regret in his eyes, but she also remembered the months when she had felt alone. Adrian wanted to speak immediately, to explain everything he had learned, but he knew words alone would not repair what had been broken. He needed to listen first. He needed to understand the pain his silence had caused. Emma remained calm. She did not welcome him with anger, but she also did not pretend everything was unchanged. She had grown during the time apart. She had learned that her worth did not depend on whether an alpha king recognized it. Adrian finally understood the lesson Emma had been forced to learn alone. Love was not proven by promises made during easy moments. It was proven by the courage to change when someone you care about is hurting. Standing there in the quiet village, the Alpha King realized that finding Emma was only the beginning. The true challenge was earning back the trust of the woman who had once believed in him completely. The quiet village beyond the forest became the place where two different worlds finally faced the truth they had both avoided. Emma Carter stood beside the small cottage she had built her new life around, looking at Alpha King Adrian Blackwood with a calm expression that showed how much she had changed. Once, she would have searched his face for reassurance. Once, she would have waited for him to tell her that everything would be different. But the woman standing before him now was no longer the same Omega who had spent months hoping to be chosen. She had learned to choose herself. Adrian understood that immediately. He could see the strength in her silence, the confidence in the way she carried herself, and the peace she had created without him. For the first time, he realized that Emma had not become stronger because she stopped caring. She became stronger because she finally understood her own value. Adrian did not begin with excuses. He did not speak about the pressure of being Alpha King or the responsibilities that had kept him quiet. Instead, he admitted the truth. He had failed to protect someone who trusted him. He had allowed tradition and fear of conflict to become more important than fairness. He had mistaken silence for wisdom when it had only allowed Emma to feel alone. Emma listened carefully, but she did not let his apology erase the past. She told him that the hardest part was never the opinions of the pack. The hardest part was knowing that the one person who could have changed everything chose not to act. Adrian accepted her words because he finally understood that forgiveness was not something he could demand. It was something he had to earn. During the following days, Adrian remained in the village, not as a king expecting respect, but as someone willing to understand the life Emma had built. He met the people who had welcomed her. He saw the kindness she shared with others. He witnessed the trust she had created without a title or royal protection. The experience changed him more than any royal meeting ever had. He realized Emma's influence had never come from power. It came from the way she made people feel valued. As they spent more time together, Adrian began noticing the small details he once overlooked. The way Emma smiled when helping others. The way she listened before speaking. The way she carried responsibility without asking anyone to praise her. These were the qualities of a true leader, and he understood why so many people respected her. Emma eventually revealed the truth about the child she carried. She did not tell him to force him back into her life. She told him because he deserved to know. Adrian was overwhelmed by the news, but more than anything, he felt the weight of the responsibility before him. The child was not a reason to claim Emma. The child was a reminder that he had a chance to become a better person. He promised Emma that he would not ask her to return until she believed he had truly changed. For the first time, The Alpha King was not asking for loyalty. He was offering respect. And Emma realized that the man standing before her was finally beginning to understand the lesson she had learned long ago. The return to Blackwood Kingdom was not a return to the life Emma Carter had left behind. It was the beginning of something entirely new. As Emma and Adrian Blackwood traveled back together, they both understood that the past could not simply be forgotten. Trust was not rebuilt in a single conversation. It was rebuilt through every choice made afterward. Adrian no longer wanted Emma to return because she was his destined Omega or because she carried the future heir of the kingdom. He wanted her beside him because he finally understood her worth as a person. When they arrived at the palace, everyone noticed the change. The Alpha King, who once stood distant and silent, now listened before making decisions. He invited members of the pack to speak openly about their concerns and began changing the traditions that had allowed some voices to be ignored. Adrian knew the kingdom could not become better by simply making promises. It needed action. It needed a leader willing to admit mistakes and create a future where respect mattered more than status. Emma watched these changes carefully. She did not return as the same woman who had once walked through those halls hoping someone would notice her. She returned with confidence, knowing that her value had never depended on anyone else's approval. She continued helping the healers and supporting the people of the kingdom. But this time, she was not trying to earn a place. She already knew she belonged. The pack members who once misunderstood her began seeing the qualities they had ignored for so long. They saw her patience, her wisdom, and the kindness that had never disappeared even during the hardest moments. Some offered apologies, and Emma accepted them with understanding. She knew people could grow when they were willing to recognize their mistakes. Adrian also changed the way he viewed leadership. He no longer believed an alpha had to appear perfect or have every answer. He learned that a true leader was someone who could listen, learn, and protect the dignity of others. The lesson Emma taught him became the foundation of a new era in the kingdom. Months later, the palace that once felt cold and distant became a place filled with connection. The child Emma and Adrian welcomed represented more than an heir. The child represented a future built on compassion. Instead of judgment, Emma looked at the kingdom from the palace balcony and remembered the day she had walked away. She remembered the pain, the uncertainty, and the fear of starting over. But she also remembered the strength she discovered when she finally chose herself. Adrian stood beside her, no longer as a ruler expecting loyalty, but as a partner who respected the woman who had changed his life. He told her that he had spent years searching for the qualities of a great leader, never realizing they had been beside him all along. Emma smiled because she knew the greatest change was not that the Alpha King finally saw her. The greatest change was that she no longer needed anyone to see her in order to know her own worth. The kingdom of Blackwood learned a lesson that would last for generations. True strength was never about who could stand above others. True strength belonged to those who had the courage to remain kind, even when the world failed to understand them.